What's the creepiest or most unexplainable thing you've ever seen that you haven't shared anywhere? Serious. Back in 2016 my mother was staying at my place because my father was in the hospital at the time and my apartment was right next to the hospital. One night I had this dream that the landline rings and my mother answers the phone and hears the news that my dad has passed away. She hangs up the phone and tells me that my uncle, a doctor at the hospital my father was in, just gave her the news of my father's passing. I wake up startled. I have a drink of water and just as I start feeling relieved that this was all just a bad dream, the phone rings and my mom picks it up. I was just watching her from a distance, noticing the expression on her face, noticing the tears that started dripping down her cheek, and she hangs up the phone and tells me that my uncle just told her that my father has passed away. This is the only unexplained thing that ever happened to me and this is the first time I share this with anybody. Edit. Thank you everyone, appreciate your kind words and condolences. As a kid I had weirdly specific dreams that became true as well, but it was only about how and what candy I get on the day. I'm sorry for your loss. Edit. Asterisk OKUHM. This got big. For those who thought that my dream influenced my choice in candy on the next day, the dream looked like this. I was sitting with my bro in our room. My mum comes home, telling us we get candy from the closet in the living room as usual. My brother and I run to the closet. I jump on the couch, my brother jumping from excitement next to me. Finally my mum came in with a key and gives us that one specific peanut candy. On the next day it happened as dreamed. I wondered all day long if I would get candy and if I get the peanut one. My mum never asked us what kind we wanted and I can't control that my brother stays on the ground. Some say it was a deja vu, but they feel different for me. I don't think so. Rescued a blue tick coonhound that had bad anxiety when we left, so he had to be crated. Went to the grocery store with wife and 2 young kids and left the dog in the crate. When we got back, the dog was out of the crate, but the crate was completely closed and latched. There was no apparent way it could have happened. We problem solved it for the entire day and couldn't figure out how he did it. Called him Blue Dinny after that. His unmatched escape skills continued though. He could open doors. No fence could hold him in. The dog simply climbed fences. We ended up rehoming him for his own safety. He actually wound up as a farm dog, which I'm sure was his best home. So, there was a video on Reddit circulating in the last year or so where the owner of a boxer, I think, had the same experience. Couldn't figure out how the F the dog kept getting out, so they set up a cam. The dog had figured out to pull up the bottom of the cage just enough to squeeze his full-size body out, leaving an empty and still locked kennel. I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't seen it myself, but I hope this brings you some peace. I got recalled into work and was driving at about 3 AM. I was in a very rural area in western Washington. As I come around a curve I see a woman in a nightgown on the side of the road looking up at a steep embankment. Just standing there staring away from the road. There are no homes nearby, not for miles. I call 911 and pull over about a minute up the road not knowing what to think. Deputy showed up, couldn't locate anyone, and was as dumbfounded as I was. What is it with ghosts wearing white, flowing nightgowns? Just once I want to hear about a girl ghost rocking SpongeBob pajama pants and fuzzy mismatched socks. My father died when I was 15. In my freshman year of college, me and my roommate in the dorms were somewhat close, but really had only been known each other for a month when the creepy thing happened. I hadn't told her much about my childhood, but she knew that my father had passed. One day she woke me up and asked me, "Did your father used to call you, insert silly childhood nickname here?" I hadn't heard that name since I was 6 or 7. I definitely never told her that he used to call me that, as it was a repressed memory that I hadn't thought about in a long time. Anyway, as it turned out, she had a dream that my father had come to her and asked her to take care of me, calling me by this silly childhood nickname. It was always difficult for me that my father never saw me graduate high school or start college. But I guess he did, from wherever he is now, removed. I was 10 riding my bicycle at dusk along the road I lived on, which was parallel to a set of railroad tracks. I moved off the road as a car sped by and a beer bottle came sailing at me from the front passenger seat. I could see two young women turned around laughing at me through the back window. I flipped them off and kept riding. About 30 seconds later, I heard the train slam into them. There's an app that has a database of all recorded accidents at railroad crossings. You could look this up if you really want closure. Edit, Apple. When I was about 9, in the 1970s, I was playing football in the street. A bus came along, so I jumped up on the pavement. As it passed, I noticed my aunt and she smiled and waved to me. When the bus had gone, I carried on playing. I went home several hours later to find my aunt had died the previous evening. I once had a dream right around the time of day that my grandma passed. She was on a bus and happy it could be. It stopped near my grandfather and I on the road next to this, and she wanted me to go along. My grandfather kept insisting that I can't go. The bus left and she was smiling and laughing as she was going to the big casino in the sky. She loved going to the casinos. I woke up shortly after from a phone call that she had died about 15 minutes ago. When I was about 11 or 12, I went with my friend and my younger brother to play football in a park that was in a pretty remote place, so there were never many people. Basically 3 or 4 people came dressed in like Victorian style clothes, set up a box underneath a tree with big branches, tied a rope around it. One of them stood there with this noose around his neck, and then his friend kicked the box, so he was hanging. They took turns doing this, and we left. Was super weird thinking back to it, and I have to check with my brother whenever I think about it to make sure it actually happened. Edit. For people asking how did they not die, they were taking turns etc. From what I remember, the box mustn't have been particularly high relative to the length of the rope, so there wasn't much of a drop if any. I don't remember how long they were swinging for, but I suppose it must have been between 15 seconds to a minute. Then the friends would put the box back for the one hanging to stand on, so they could get down, and someone else would take their place. This sounds like an edgy photo shoot to me. My friend and I were sleeping in my parents' room one night when she was over, and it was probably about 3 AM. Suddenly we hear a sound like a fart from the corner of the room, and distinctly from this one corner. So I ask my friend if she farted, and of course she says no, as it clearly came from that corner. Thinking maybe it's my dogs as they sometimes sleep in my parents' room, I go and check it out, but realize they're not in the room with us. Okay, so that's weird, I thought, and my friend also said she heard a distinct fart too, so we assumed that maybe we both misheard. Then all of a sudden an unknown caller starts ringing my phone and I don't answer, because at this point I'm freaked the duck out. After I decline the call, I receive a message from an unknown caller with the same area code as the caller who had just called me. The text message is all in Spanish and my friend decide to paste the text into Google Translate, where it proceeds to say, "Did you hear that fart?" Needless to say, we never slept in my parents' room again, and we are convinced that we have a Spanish farting ghost in our presence. Edit. No brothers that would have pranked me either. I have a sister, but she was as amused as I was when I told her. Freakiches. More than any other story on this thread, I want an explanation for this. The Spanish farting ghost who can text. In my mother's house, the basement light would turn on while we were away, and even if it was turned off before we left, it was somehow back on when we got back. Once I went downstairs and was like, "Hey Mr. Ghostman, this is not good for the bills, could you chill it with the lights?" "Yes, I know it's dark down here, okay thanks, lights stayed off." Edit. ****, holy Christ, more than 2 people upvoted me. What? Also, no, I have not seen Parasite. She lives in a small townhome and the basement is small, bare, and open. If someone could hide in there, I'd be extremely impressed given the complete lack of hiding spaces. When I get the chance, I'll give her a nightlight for Mr. Ghost when I see her. It's what he deserves. Also, if we did have a squatter, that person wouldn't be able to hide very long. My dog and 2 cats live there, all of which are very alert to strangers, smell, or looks, especially the dog. He seems polite. My dorm hall had some weird shit happen, but one of the weirdest was that I went to the bathroom to wash my face and brush my teeth. The sink was right next to the entrance, and as I washed my face, I saw and heard the door open, and noticed a figure move to the end of the stalls. I figured a girl had just come in to use the bathroom. I dry off my face and begin brushing my teeth, but realized I didn't hear anyone else. I checked each stall and no one was in there. I quickly grabbed my stuff and noped out. Something similar happened to me at my old university. This dorm was always known as the haunted dorm, but it was quiet for the most part and I really enjoyed living there. Creepy things would occasionally happen there, like sometimes before bed it'd feel like I was being watched, but it was never intensely scary. Then one day I'm in the shower, and it's a community bathroom so anyone can come in at any time, and I hear someone open the bathroom door, set something down, and all the while they're humming some song. It's actually kind of pleasant, and I planned on complimenting them when I got out of the shower, but as soon as I get out, the humming stops and there's no one there. I go out in the hall, and there's no one out there either. I go back in the bathroom, and quickly realize there was no one ever in that bathroom with me to begin with. I told someone else about it who lived in the building with me, but she didn't believe me, so I never really spoke about it again. I was working in a retail store in a pretty sketchy area. There was this lady who was obviously a heavy drug user or ex-drug user. She must have been in her 50s or 60s. She was notorious on my block for being a crazy, but she'd visit me all the time and told me she thought I was cute. It was really bizarre cause she looked like a crackhead, but she'd act like a teenage girl around me. I tried to be nice to her cause she was known for being volatile. Anyway, on Christmas Eve she packed an entire Christmas dinner which she told me was all home cooked Guyanese food and a cologne set. As she was leaving she just squats down on the floor and throws her hand up and starts cackling. Yes, cackling which faded to a giggle. Never saw her again. Edit. Yes, I ate it, and I enjoyed it. Confirmed with some Guyanese redditors. Main dish was definitely pepper pot. Second edit. So a lot of you seem really surprised I ate the food. Some describing it as insanity. Some as a mark of true bravery. Let me be very clear, the point of the post wasn't even about me eating the food. It basically take free food from a stranger any given day of the week. From the moment she handed me the food, I knew I was going to eat it. Neither the prior knowledge of her being a druggie nor any action she would take after handing me the food was going to change this. Squats down on the floor and throws her hand up and starts cackling. That's gotta be one of the ducking creepiest turn of events I've ever had to think about. Whether it's the old crack or Lucifer himself, that chiz ain't right. I was in my final year at uni, and I worked as a TA for a language prof. This meant teaching 1-hour sessions multiple times a week. I basically lived in the known to be haunted humanities building. One Tuesday after my final class and before my first lesson of the evening, I was in the staff room heating up my chiz tea microwave dinner. A woman I had never seen before came in. Obligatory oblem just scooch past and check the time on the coffee machine. Now I found it odd that this university employee came here just to check the time on the coffee machine. You don't have a phone, computer / watch clock. But who am I and my lean cuisine to judge? She looks at the time on the coffee machine and says, "That can't be right. What time is it?" Me, it's 5:37. Her, HMM 5 minutes fast. Okay. With that she left, and although a bit odd, I didn't dwell on the interaction. That is, until 1 week later, Tuesday evening, I was again heating up my food when she enters. Obligatory oblem just scooch past and check the time. That can't be right. What time is it? I look at my phone. It is exactly 5:37. I tell her, and once again she says 5 minutes fast. Okay, and leaves. I'm deeply unsettled. The microwave dings. I take my lean cuisine and quickly head upstairs. Never saw that woman again. Edit. Thanks for the yikes award. Exactly my feelings. Edit 2. You'll thinkin' this was Wisconsin, but it was Missouri. That is the most Midwestern scary story I've ever heard. I was probably 18 years old and was driving at night to see a friend. This man kind of jumped in front of the car to make me stop. He honestly looked crazy. I slowed down the car to almost stop, and he moved to talk to me, I think through the window. But I just drove off once he got out of the way. I was so creeped out. I never told anyone, because I felt guilty that I didn't help him. Yeah, it's never good to stop for something like that at night. Best you can do is call the cops. It sucks if the person really needed help, but not worth putting yourself in danger, especially now that cell phones are a thing. It's been almost 10 years, and I still don't have anything that's somewhat close to an explanation what happened, and my bestie and me were sleeping over at her grandma's house and enjoying the newly renovated attic as it was supposed to become her little teenager apartment. All new furniture with a huge comfy couch and nice clean board screwed to the wall, all in white pink. Sleepover went just like you would imagine it, with two 15-year-old girls painting nails, watching DVDs, and talking about the hottest gossip at school. It was already like 3 AM when we decided to go get some sleep and left the room to sleep in the bed next door. Only a few minutes later we heard a little scratching sound followed by a loud bang, clearly coming from the room we just left. One of the boards that were screwed to the wall was lying on the floor, almost 4 meters away from where it was supposed to be. Not like screw broke and it fell. Nope. Solid 4 meters away from that wall. Almost 2 centimeters deep hole in the ground where the board was laying. The holes in the wall looked like something grabbed that board and pulled it straight out, ripping the wood and concrete it was drilled to. Still getting goosebumps remembering it. Carpenter chiming in. This happens fairly often when a wall or ceiling is clad with boards, but there is no room left for the wood to expand. Wood warms up or takes on some moisture and pop. Here is a creepy/weird story. During a road trip from NJ to NC, my friend and I decided we were hungry and went looking for food in a town in Maryland. I don't remember the name of the town, but it felt very strange as soon as we pulled onto the main road, as there didn't seem to be any people out and about. It was the middle of the day, but no one was walking around. There weren't any restaurant food options other than a pizza place, so we pulled up and parked in front of the pizza place. It seemed like everyone in the town must have gone to that pizza place. When we parked the car, everyone in the restaurant turned and looked at our car through the big glass windows. Like, at the same time. They stared at us, we stared at them. It felt so weird that I said, I don't want to go in there. My friend just nodded at me wide-eyed, and we drove to another town for lunch. Why was seemingly the whole town in that pizza place? What was with the staring? I'm almost a little sorry we didn't go in to find out, but at the same time not sorry at all. I just wanted to do a quick edit because I want to answer everyone's questions. As much as I would like to address them individually, I don't think I will be able. I wish I knew the name of the town. I think I never actually knew it. This story takes place 20 years ago. Google wasn't a thing. I think I had a beeper. I was new to driving, so using a paper map, my equally young and unexperienced in travel friend and I drove through the western part of Maryland to avoid major cities en route to Asheville, North Carolina. After reading everyone's comments, I agree we probably stumbled on a small town party or a very busy lunch hour. It just felt so scary to us at the time. I agree it seems Lovecraftian/Stephen King-esque. I also hope we weren't going to be on the next day's menu. No, we were two 16 to 17-year-old white girls with dark brown hair. This was midday, I was driving, no headlights. I hope this answers everyone's questions. I'm going to go enjoy Friday night as best as I can, with some Moscow mules, and hope everyone is staying safe. That gives me the whole new sheriff walking into the town saloon kinda feel. Cold just been free pizza day edit. Damn, that's a lot of upvotes. Second edit to shiny silver. I was in bed at night, woken up by the sound of steps on my roof tiling. I think I was about 13 at the time. I see a shadow walk past my skylight, unsure of what it was. I look outside my side window and see a man dressed in all black looking out from the construction scaffolding. After a while he looks into my window and I try to hide. My brother also saw him. We never found out what happened to him, but the police were informed. My crackhead neighbors always go on my roof. When I was a kid I was playing in our kitchen when I saw a huge dark figure walk past the kitchen and down the hallway leading to the bedrooms. I walked to our back patio and saw the rest of my family watching TV. The patio is on the opposite side of the house from the hallway. I walked to the hallway and started looking for who it could have been, but never found anyone. Still have no idea who or what it could have been, but it's always creeped me out thinking about it. This happened to me too, but it was my 6'7" uncle looking for beer in the garage past our bedrooms. I never make it in time to answer these, and have pretty much kept this story to myself. I remember telling one person who told me don't repeat that, don't mess with whatever that was, so I didn't. I guess read at your own risk. When I was 10 I went with my parents to this campground so they could visit their friends. They had a son who I got along with, same age. Sometimes however if there was other kids around the son would try and pick on me to impress them. Me and the son went fishing and right as we're about to leave another kid comes and joins us and the son immediately starts picking on me. Not wanting to be stuck on a boat and teased I decided to leave and walk back to the campground by myself. I didn't want to go straight back to my parents because they'd ask why I wasn't with the son and I didn't want to get into it. So I just walked on this U-shaped road. In the center of the U are campers and on the other side is woods with a lake around it. At the very center of the U is a park. Perfect. I think I'll just sit on the swings until I think enough time has passed to go back. As I'm on the swings I notice a path directly across from me. I get up and start walking along this dirt path. There are reeds on either side of me and I have my hand stretched out as I walk dead center of this path. My hands can just barely touch these reeds unless I move closer to one side. I walk for about 10 minutes maybe and I get to this pond. Crystal clear water and I have this urge to drink it. It looks so refreshing. I kneel down and suddenly the hairs on the back of my neck go straight up. It was like I snapped back into myself. What am I doing? Why am I about to drink pond water? Why did I walk down this path? I start feeling really uneasy, so I turn around and start walking the same way I came. Let me clarify. There was only one path. Straight. I made no turns. I didn't walk around this pond. I simply walked to the end of the path, got freaked out about something and turned around. Suddenly all types of bugs were now around. I kept walking and I noticed the dirt path is getting more and more narrow. The reeds and tall grass are now at my arms and there's a constant buzzing feeling in my ears from these bugs. The path gets so narrow that I have to walk sideways to avoid the reeds. I yell out help and I hear a voice ask if I'm okay. I reply I'm lost and a woman says just walk straight honey, I see you. I see nothing, it's just tall ground reeds. I walk a few feet and see the road. I'm scratched from head to toe and there's a woman by the playground asking what happened. She takes a Kleenex out of her pocketbook and starts wiping some of the scratches and I tell her what happened. I look behind me and see no path. I'm at the same park. I'm in front of the swing I was just on. The woman looks at me and tells me that I shouldn't even think about it and to just forget it happened because I'm fine now. But she really emphasized not to talk about it. I've always been on the fence about it. I'm sure there was one path in and one path out. The bugs could have steered me off course. Maybe me being paranoid? Or something more sinister that nearly trapped me for good. Any idea what campground it was? A number of years ago, I was using an online chat site and got talking to a woman who claimed to live around 50 miles from me. We chatted quite happily for a couple of days. Then on the third day, a Saturday night, she was online and we were chatting, but she seemed different somehow. Something just didn't seem right, but I couldn't put my finger on it. She explained that she was drinking, and I assumed that this was the reason behind the melancholy. We continued chatting, and she put on a cam, so I could see her there drinking as we chatted. Over a couple hours of chatting her mood appeared to grow darker, and she appeared distressed, but was hesitant to elaborate further. She left and returned around 30 minutes later, and appeared drunker and more distressed. This time she had a stack of tablets on the table in front of her. She claimed that she couldn't go on, and started to take tablet after tablet. I had no idea what this medication was. She was continuing to take more and more tablets and her speech was getting more and more slurred. I was suddenly in a terrible position. Was I seeing someone take their own life on a live stream and totally unable to do anything? All I had was a name and a town, both of which could be false. I made the excuse of needing the toilet and left the room, and took this opportunity to call my local police and explained the situation. The police took what details I knew, and I was told to go back and try and keep her talking and try and get further details from her. They sent a plainclothed officer to my house, and whilst I was chatting to her he pulled up the chat logs and history on his laptop. By this time her speech was becoming more and more incoherent and the cam was knocked so it was impossible to see her. Soon the connection was lost. Was this real? Was it fake? I had no idea of knowing. The police officer was during this time on the phone with the station giving them what information he had been able to obtain. He then left, leaving me to contemplate. The next evening I got a call from the local police station, who wanted to thank me. The police had managed to trace her through her IP address and had been able to attend. It apparently was a genuine suicide attempt, and she had been taken to hospital and was subsequently undergoing treatment. Damn, good on you for that. Also, nice job from the cops. Mine's pretty minor. I was awake one summer night with my window wide open to try to cool my room, and I heard this gigantic droning sound appear out of nowhere and remained for a few minutes. Sounded like it was coming from just outside my window above the road. It was one of the loudest sounds I've ever heard. Didn't sound like a helicopter. There wasn't that chop of blades in the air, and once it had stayed for a few minutes, it faded away, like it was going up into the air. Never heard anything like it since. Removed. My father was my grandmother's favorite child out of 6, partially because he was by far the youngest out of 10 children. She nicknamed him Little Mountain, as the last character in his Chinese name was, or Mountain. I remember going to her funeral when she passed, and we were burning paper money for her to use in the afterlife, a Taiwanese/Chinese tradition. I vividly remember watching my dad picking up a scrap of half-burnt money and making a sort of strangled noise. It was burnt in such a way that it resembled the character, even down to the middle prong being longer than the other two. I'm seriously not religious or superstitious, but that was probably the closest I ever got to believing in the supernatural, or at least ghosts. Favorite out of 6, or favorite out of 10. When I was 5, me and my identical twin sister both caught scarlet fever. We are from America, but my dad's project had temporarily relocated us to India, and we were not used to the water and food there. We both fell into a coma towards the end of the fever. One day I woke up to my mom and aunt screaming and crying and holding my sister because she was unresponsive and not breathing. They were doing chest compressions, CPR, etc. But nothing was working. I was desperately trying to get their attention because I was young and didn't understand what was going on. I went back in my room to go back to sleep, but in the corner of the room where my sister's bed was, I saw her laying there, breathing fine. I went back out to the living room and realized I was looking at myself in my mom's arms as she tried to revive me. Eventually, I saw my eyes flicker open, and then everything went dark. I woke up a few weeks later in the hospital next to my sister and mom, who ended up catching it because of us. My mom told me I had almost died, and they were trying to wake me up, but I was unresponsive, so the ambulance took all 3 of us into the ICU. To this day, I'm still unsure how I witnessed my almost death. I might have an answer for you. I had something similar, to a much lesser extent, when I was a kid. I wrecked my bike at my grandparents' house by flying off their 7 feet tall retaining wall to the underground garage. The way I remember it, I had an out-of-body experience where I was watching myself from above, soaring through the air, and then popped back into my body right as I hit the ground. I was knocked out, had no sense of myself or anything, but I could hear everything going on around me. I could hear the neighborhood kids yelling to go get my grandparents and eventually them getting their own parents to come help me. Anyways, I come to, and am completely okay thanks to my helmet. The helmet on the other hand was shredded to cheese. Jump to a few years ago. I'm listening to NPR and there is a program called Radio Lab airing a story about out-of-body experiences that fighter pilots used to experience. I've left a link below to the story for you or anyone else who wants to hear it. Buenos dias. I laid down to sleep one night. It always took me forever to fall asleep, as I'd have to breathe deeply for an hour to relax enough to drop off. A few minutes after I got into bed, the door to my room flew open with a bang. I heard something quite large and noisy stomp around the open area of my room. Even felt a breeze that ruffled my hair, and then my door slammed shut and all was quiet. I was paralyzed with fear for a long time. Never got up to investigate due to sheer terror. No one else was home. Edited to add, sleep paralysis is a really good suggestion as to why this happened. But I don't think it was. First, I had only been in bed a few minutes, and since it always took me a very long time and effort to get to sleep, I'm absolutely sure I had not slept. Second, I had sleep paralysis for about 10 years, but had trained my body to no longer have it. My method was to never sleep on my back and never take naps. Once my sleep schedule got regular and could sleep on my side, I rarely had sleep paralysis. But if I did have it on occasion, I used my mad zen skills to calm myself and my breathing down and go to my happy place. Once it was no longer scary, I never had it again, and I haven't had it in about 20 years at this point. Edit #2, thanks for the silver. You sure it wasn't sleep paralysis? I work as an adult novelty store manager with a theater, so please envision the kind of customers I get. I had this regular who was nice enough, and we always exchanged pleasantries and small talk. One day we said goodbye, and as he went to leave he stopped dead in his tracks and came back to the counter. He told me that he ignores it every time, but today it won't let him. So naturally I ask what the hell is he talking about. He proceeds to tell me that there is an older black man who is with me 24/7. He sees him every time I'm in the store. The older black man just stands next to me watching me and smiling. At that point a chill ran up my spine, because no one in that store knows besides my boss that I'm half black and my 65-year-old black father that I was so close to pard in 2014. I said the usual wow and oh my god, so I won't give anything away to see what else he says to see if it's legit. The customer proceeds to tell me that the man, my father, is sad about his kids not doing what has asked them to do, and one particular child I has greatly disappointed him. The man, my father, also wants the customer to tell me how much he loves his wife, even though she's married again. At this point I have tears in my eyes because how would this man know there's conflict between me and my siblings because of my dad's death? How would this man know my mother is married again? He kept mentioning that he could feel a strong religious pull with my father. My father was a preacher. He told me a bunch of other things and asked if I was pregnant. I told him no, but apparently my next child will have my father's soul according to him. My 2-year-old son looks like my father and loves his favorite songs. I have never seen that man again. That's both creepy and kind of sweet. Running through a large field in the middle of a nice neighborhood on Halloween night. Got geed sprinting halfway and reached out to hold onto a tiny tree. Felt what I can only describe as claws like bugles on your fingertips wrap around my hand. Noped the FK out and ran back to my group of friends. There were no leaves because it was full, so I still have no clue what it was. Skill, I hope. Well, I think I may have shared this once before, but I was driving with someone through a very odd small town in Arizona. As soon as we entered the city limits, I felt this extreme heaviness. Very surreal, dark, almost like a shroud of evil. As soon as we exited the limits, we both, not having spoken in a few minutes, said, "Did you feel that?" We both did. It was really weird. About a month later, I was reading Time magazine. I think it was Time, and there was an article about that town and how it is so well known for cult-like polygamy and child marriage, etc. That explained a lot. This is crazy. My wife and I stayed in Canab while visiting Zion National Park. We drove through Colorado City after getting booze from the state, ran liquor store in St. George. As we parred through Colorado City, I remember her saying this town is ducking creepy. I'm 100% sure it was Colorado City. I had forgotten about that until I read this post and just read up on the town's history on Wiki. When my daughter was very young, 3 to 4, we were on a family vacation in a state park lodge. Our room had exposed wood ceiling beams to match the decor. Important later. It was supposed to be nap time for my daughter, but she was quietly playing by herself and just chatting away, and the wife and I were eating on the other bed. Out of the blue my daughter turns to me and asks for a piece of rope. I asked why she needed the rope and she nonchalantly replies, "It is for my friend, the purple girl on the ceiling." My wife asks, "What friend?" And my daughter responds, "I've been talking with the little purple girl hanging from that wood up there." She asked me for another piece of rope. Needless to say that nap time was over, and we quickly exited the room. Removed. I used to live in the middle of nowhere. The town had less than 200 people in it. I used to work through the night in one of the metro areas, and it was about a 40-minute drive with about 15 of it on a county road. I used to think I would see cheetahs in the fields, coyotes, deer, etc. all the time. Never thought twice. Well, one morning I was on my way home, about 3 AM, and we had a little bridge to cross. Right before we got to our road, as in closing in on crossing the bridge, I can see something pearl white just hanging out in the middle of the road. Thought it was probably a swan, and it would move. As I got closer I realized that swans are not that big. I was in a ref 150, and it was at eye level with me. When its wings opened up it literally covered both lanes of traffic. I swerved to miss it, but hit some of the wing. I slammed on my brakes and turned around. Whatever it was 100% gone without a trace. Never saw it again. If it was a bird, that's the ducking biggest bird I have ever seen. Oh, and I did not alive by anything considered to be a large body of water. Edit. The only thing I can describe it as a humongous crane, but the only area where cranes live close to that old house was about 5 hours away. Edit. Grammar. Removed. Back when I was 9 or so, me and my friend were having a sleepover. His parents were at a dinner, and his brother was out getting stoned somewhere. Anyways, it was probably 9 PM. His parents had just called and said that dinner had turned into drinks, and they would be out for a little while longer. Anyways, we were young, playing Minecraft on the Xbox 360, when we heard his front door open. ****it had a very noticeable noise when it opened. Very creaky, almost eerie, so we thought, oh, it's probably just your brother, and kept playing, thinking nothing of it. Then, we heard footsteps on the floor above us. We once again thought nothing of it, seeing as his kitchen was above the basement, where we were playing games, and his brother was likely there for mid-high munches. But then, we heard another set of footsteps. We were confused at this point, but we didn't worry as it was either his parents or a stoner friend of his brother. We then heard a scratching at the basement door. We both looked at each other like, is that just me, or is there a scratching? He didn't have any pets, so, me being the oldest by 2 months, went to go check. I opened the door and there was nothing there. I yelled upstairs to his brother, let's call him Jim. Jim, you're not scaring us. Stop it. No reply. So I sat back down and continued playing. Now, there was a scratching on the window. We were honestly terrified, and we stayed seated, one of us looking at the door, the other looking at the window. Then, again, scratching at the door. I opened it with a baseball bat in hand, and *NOTHING*. We barricaded the door, and put things in front of the window. We didn't hear anything for the next half an hour, and eventually fell asleep. The next morning his dad came down and knocked on the door and tried to get into the basement. We took down the barricade and his dad came into the room, furious. Why the hell did you guys rip open the screen door? We went upstairs and sure enough, the front door screen was shredded. We tried to convince him that it wasn't us and that the brother had done it to scare us. But what he said next made our blood run cold. Jim wasn't home at all last night. We dropped him off in the city with his friends. My friend's house was half an hour away from the city, and none of the people at his friend's house had cars. Me and my friend looked at each other and couldn't speak. Needless to say, his parents didn't believe us. They called my parents, and me and my friend had to split the cost to have the basement door replaced. It had tons of scratch marks as well, and the screen door replaced. Me and my friend still bring this up to this day. Whenever we meet, edit 1. Holy chiz, I had no idea this would blow up. Fact, did you get your money back? A. Yes, I got my money back after they moved. Fact, could it have been an animal? A. Yes, it's a possibility, although when I opened the door I didn't see anything. That is legit horrifying. I imagine there were no other signs of an animal in the house. Did any other things happen to him in that house? So, I was definitely atheist pre this chiz, now IDK what to believe. Last fall I had a dream with my deceased grandmother. We were in a casino in Wendover playing blackjack, and she was basically just catching up. She looked young again, and was in a very lovely black dress and shawl. We drank and laughed and played, then she had to go. It was a really vivid lovely dream. Cut to about a week later at my sister's birthday party. She's talking to one of our cousins about a dream she had a week prior with our deceased grandmother. Detail for detail, it was the same dream that I had not told anyone about. The difference? Me and grandma played blackjack. They were playing poker. I still to this day have no logical explanation, but it's the strangest feeling I remember having. Thanks for the responses everyone. Yes, coincidence is definitely the most logical explanation for this dream. Few things. I've never been to a casino with my grandmother. Also, my sister and I are not very close. We grew up in different homes and see each other holidays/special occasions. With the timing and details, they could just be coincidence, but it's all a bit too many coincidences for me to just dismiss. Personally anyway. Grandma polishing her skills for afterlife casinos. A couple of summers ago, myself and some friends from university went to visit one of our friends' houses since we were going to a festival nearby and had been offered to stay over. Long story short, her family are extremely rich with a huge old mansion in the English countryside. As with any home this big, we had a bit of a tour around and were shown our guest rooms. Her dad began to tell us that the place was haunted in a joking tone and mentioned that when they first moved there, a dresser had been left behind in one of the guest rooms, the one I was staying in. This was one of the only things left behind, and they'd found a lock of hair in one of the drawers. I'm not really a believer of ghost stories, so at the time I just shrugged it off as a joke, although it's still a bit weird admittedly. That night I got into bed and began to notice that the air felt strangely cold around me, but there wasn't a particular breeze. The rest of the house had been a perfectly normal temperature just before this too. As I slept, I kept having the most surreal dreams, nothing like when I'd normally sleep. I'd constantly awaken feeling cold. It was like when you're very unwell and find yourself somewhat hallucinating in bed while you dip in and out of sleep. The other weird thing was that this was the middle of August, and in the UK we don't typically have air conditioning, not unless you're in an office or something. I woke up the next morning, and on one side of the room there are two hanging rails for clothes. The guest room is normally used for storing spare clothes. Several of the clothing items were on the floor. The hangers had completely come off the railings, and I could have sworn these were all hung up the night before. Like I say, I'm not really a believer of paranormal stuff, but that night has spooked me ever since. I've never experienced anything quite as strange. I do wonder if her dad's stories of it being haunted had planted a placebo in my head, though. You were off to Reading Festival? I've told this story on here before. I used to live in really rural Texas and was driving down a farm to market road during some very thick fog. I was in an old pickup truck and was going maybe 20 to 30 miles per hour because I couldn't see very far ahead. Super glad I was. As I came around a turn, I saw through the fog this big hulking figure lurching across the road. I slowed down, pulled up near it to par, and saw what was the biggest hog I've ever seen in my life. A good 400 pounds certainly. It was dead, probably destroyed whatever car hit it, and dragging it to the side of the road, an absolutely massive white shaggy dog. Y'all, this dog. I was in a pickup truck, and this dog made eye contact with me, lifted its head, and stared me level in the eye for what felt like an eternity. I stopped my truck and stared. I was so caught off guard. After probably a few seconds, felt like forever, it put its head back down, grabbed a chunk of hog, and continued making its way off the road. To break it down, this dog was smart enough to move the animal it wanted to eat, large and strong enough to drag a 400-ish pound hog across pavement, and tall enough to look me in the eye in a pickup. I will never forget those eyes. It had mud-stained white fur, a big block head, and a long wolfy tail. It looked almost like a Pyrenees, common around there, but with a big street Bernard-shaped head and double the normal size. Big glowing yellow eyes. I have no idea if it was some freak mutant farm dog, a spirit, a wolf, or what, but I'd like to never see it again. Edit. It looked sort of like this dog, but all white with much longer legs and a bottle brush tail. It was a little more shaggy and a little less floofy too. Maybe a Pyrenean Mastiff mix and my mind is playing tricks on me. It was just so absolutely massive though. I'm in Eastern Canada and my mom has a story of a gigantic white wolf cutting in front of her while she was driving home one night, also on a backcountry road. The opposite of creepy. My first, second-hand, cat kept visiting me for years after he passed away. We were very close and his passing was heartbreak for me, but he never really left. It could be a movement in the corner of your eye, him sitting at the top of the stairs. When I opened the door, feeling him cuddled up to me. A fantastic experience, always unexpected. I couldn't call him or anything, just indications he was there. Love, D. Him. When I was a child, it stopped happening. When I was in my teens, I was visited over the years by 4 pets that had pardon in my dreams. Each visit only happened once, and was a very vivid dream that I would remember upon waking up. So glad to hear about your experience. I think a pet's love truly knows no bounds. Not technically seen, but heard. When I was about 15, I willingly stayed home alone to look after my pets while my family went on a cruise. One night I heard the distinct sound of the old kitchen window open, freaked out and hid in the cupboard. Was so afraid that I called the police. They showed up soon after. One stayed with me and the other went around outside to check the window. Window was closed, no footprints, no marks on the window or anything. To this day I'm puzzled by this, and I'm still confident that I really did hear that window open. Oh, I believe you. Had a similar thing happen when I was around 13 to 14. Family went out for the night to my sister's game, school sports, and I wasn't feeling great, so just stayed home watching Enter the Dragon. Still remember that vividly. While watching the movie, heard our side door open, the hinges were really creaky, and shut. Then heard about 2 to 3 heavy footsteps, like someone wearing heavy boots. Made sense as it was December in Michigan. Called out thinking one of my parents came home early. Nothing. Called out again, but this time I was getting the hairs on my arms and legs sticking up as I was spooked, and again nothing. Said nope, and just bolted out our back sliding door. Didn't see my parents' car they took, then hid in our truck bed that was covered in front of the house for a secretary to see if I could see anyone in the house through our living room window curtains. Was a big like 12x8 window. While I waited, I then saw a visible human shadow. Curtains were closed, power in front of the TV. Bolted like 1/2 mile to a friend of the family's house. Not fun barefoot in winter. They took me in and called the cops after I explained what happened and why I was there. Cops came and checked it out. Nothing. No wet footprints in our breezeway that led to the side door or any wet footsteps in the house. Side door was also locked. They even checked for tracks in the snow around the house, but nothing except for my bare footprints running away. I still stand by what I saw and heard and know it wasn't from the movie itself. House did, and still, scares me. Other paranormal chairs in that house all growing up till we finally moved, when I was 15. A decade ago a girlfriend, let's call her M, moved in with me, but she gave me a warning. There's a man that follows me. He's not evil or anything like that, but he doesn't like men. That should have been the time I noped the F out of my own home, but I was in love, and just accepted her wild statement. Fast forward a few months later, home alone, M just left for work and I'm showering. I hear the bathroom door open and hit the dresser behind it. I look to my right and see a shadow through the curtain. I jokingly say out loud, "Oh, you're back for some bonus shower time." As I open the curtain, nobody is there, still home alone. A few days later I come home from work and hang my keys on the hook like I always do and walk away. An hour goes by when I notice my keys rocking back and forth on the hook. Minutes turn into hours as my keys keep rocking. Finally M comes home and looks at me, looks at the keys, and asks how long. I just stared at her as she stops the keys, as if it was as common as op not delivering on a locked safe. The two worst ones happened close together. Again I'm in the bathroom, on my knees as I scrub the tub. I feel as though someone is next to me, breathing on me. As I jerk away a hand grabs my leg and yanks me towards the bathroom door. And then nothing. That night I'm out with a group of friends, I'm telling them these same stories, and at the end the light above us flickers and shuts off. As we all look up to the light my chair gets picked up and thrown into the table. I turn around to scold the jacker behind me but nobody was there. Everyone just stared at me with shocked looks on their faces because they just witnessed the man. The finale. It's late and Emma's downstairs in bed. I'm turning off the lights as I hear a laundry room door close and footsteps leading to the bedroom. My brain is thinking Emma's awake, so I go to the bedroom. I open the door to the sound of her softly snoring. I turn around and am hit with the loveliest smell I have ever experienced. It's the smell of my late nana's home. Her perfume is everywhere. After that moment the man was gone. It's like she came into the home and removed his presence. I can't explain it. All I know is that I haven't smelled that scent in well over 20 years. And I doubt I'll ever smell it again. TLDR/I had a ghost that haunted me and my late nana made it disappear. Are you still with this girl? That chiz would have me running so fast. When I was 20 I visited a town in Italy that has a number of medieval towers that you can climb. My girlfriend didn't want to climb any, so I went up one on my own and was the only person at the time doing so. It was a sunny day when I entered the tower. There was a flight of stairs that wound around the edge of the tower and no windows. Climbing the tower took at the very most 5 minutes. At the top of the stairs there was a ladder and a trapdoor that opened up onto the roof of the tower. When I opened it, I found the weather had changed dramatically and was overcast and threatening. I forget if there was thunder or not, but I was genuinely concerned about lightning being at the top of a tall tower in that weather. I cautiously climbed out onto the roof just to have a quick look before going straight down. The roof was surrounded with a sort of metal cage of bars that were clearly intended to prevent anyone falling/jumping off the tower. I heard some thunder and saw electricity arc between some of the bars. Not a blinding lightning strike, just arcing. I decided that the tower was imminently going to be struck and descended as quickly as I could. At the bottom I was surprised to find the weather was again sunny with a clear sky. My girlfriend could tell I was shaken and was amazed when I told her I thought that maybe there had been lightning. The weather hadn't changed whilst I'd been up the tower. I've started to tell the story a couple of times, but it's just too weird to expect anyone to believe. I have literally no explanation. I'm very much a skeptic when it comes to the paranormal. I'm not religious, and I've had no other weird experiences like this. In short, I'm not your stereotypical spooky things happen to me kind of person. And yet, edit, did a bit of googling, and I'm 90% sure it was the Torgrosser in San Gimignano. It doesn't have a cage around the top, but there is a metal cage around the bells and I guess that's what I remember. I always feel weird vibes from old European structures. Not like anything urgent that makes me wanna immediately get out of there, but it's like I don't belong there. That there's this whole history to it, some cruel at times, that I don't wanna disturb. I used to live in a house with 2 roommates. Let's call them Anna and Erica. I lived on the 2nd floor and Anna and Erica lived downstairs. Every night I would hear this thud coming from downstairs. I would investigate and it always came from Anna's room. I thought it was her doing burpees or working out at night, which seems dumb looking back. I never talked to Erica about it because I thought it was in my head, and since I was on the 2nd floor it never really bothered me. Fast forward 2 years and we all move into a new house with another roommate. Anna, Erica, and I live on the same floor upstairs. I start hearing the thud louder now. I go up to Anna's door and it sounds like she's hitting herself against a wall and whispering and crying or laughing. I also noticed when she left the room she had her sheets all scattered on the floor. I ask my other roommate Erica about it and she says she hears it too. Anna starts staying at her parents' house more often, but every time she comes home we hear the same thud noise. We started asking Anna about it and she makes up excuses like I was moving furniture or my porch door was swinging open. After we started questioning her more, she only came to our house maybe 1 a month to pick up some clothes. It was so strange. I never think we'll get an explanation. Wow, I wonder if it's something like sleepwalking or a neurotic thing she does that she is ashamed of that she wouldn't be comfortable admitting. I do hope she is okay. When I was 15 I started to read Pet Sematary, so I'm at my home. My parents work the night shift, so I'm alone, and around 2 AM the morning I'm well into the book. It's a real page turner. In the book moment cat comes back from cemetery I hear a noise outside my window. I live on the entrance floor, open my curtain and a black cat perched on the ledge looking inside. I knock the window to scare the cat and the ducker hissed at me. Shat myself. The ducker stayed there for a good couple of minutes, but then again this was in Turkey and cats won't give a duck since they know we won't hurt them. Some Edgar Allan Poe is right there. I've had 3 miscarriages. I knew I was going to miscarry before it happened. Each time I saw my baby as a young kid waving at me like a goodbye. My third I lost in the bathroom the next day. With my daughter I knew it would be okay because I had no dream of her saying goodbye like my previous babies. Oh no. I'm so sorry for your losses and so happy that you have your daughter. When I was a kid, 10 to 11 years old, I awoke in the middle of an autumn night and looked out my window. There, just 20 to 30 feet away from me were two spherical balls of light dancing around each other. They seemed to float in midair. I awed myself I was awake, and I was. They bounced around for a while, then disappeared slowly, like a light dimming. It was ducking weird. Edit. Remembered more. It was pitch black. I grew up in Norway, and in autumn it gets really dark. It was also raining, or a light drizzle. I distinctly remember the drops of water on the window creating a trippy visual interacting with the spheres. I must have been watching a good few minutes, and the spheres were moving really slowly past an outhouse in our garden. My memory of this is really not one of fear, but more of curiosity and fascination. I'm 100% sure I was awake, and that I really saw this. Ball lightning? I've seen it. It's weird. Several years ago my friends and I were road tripping cross country, and we stopped at a campsite in southern Oregon. Something about this unnorming place made us all uneasy. It felt like everyone was staring at us as we drove in and set up our tents. We'd gotten that treatment in places where we'd stuck out, but here it seemed less like gawking and more like suspicion, malice. The sun set, our gear was set up, and we got in the car to smoke some legal weed before bed. We were talking and palming a pipe around, and my friend in the backseat had the door cracked with his knee against it. With no warning something slammed into the car hard enough that backseat friend was pushed away from the door and the whole car rocked on its suspension. We immediately started the engine, turned on the brights and drove around our area looking. Nothing. We fell asleep in the car arguing over if anyone was willing to get our gear before we went to a motel. Something similar happened with me and my family, except in Washington. We were visiting some relatives and sitting with them at a softball game. However, the locals kept staring at us as if they knew we were visitors. These locals all seemed to look similar too, but not sure if that means anything. It's as if they felt we didn't belong there. When I was about 16 my friend stayed the night at my house. At the time I was really into the paranormal and had just learned about EVP, electronic voice phenomenon. That night we had watched Mothman Prophecies before going to sleep. I remember it was storming outside and there was thunder and lightning. Important later. Before going to sleep I had set up a microphone on my PC to record sounds. BC my house had some weird things happen in the past, and watching that movie pumped me TF up to get an EVP that night. I start the recording and test the mic. I could see spikes on the track when we talked, and I specifically remember seeing a huge spike when some thunder rattled the house. The next morning I stopped the recording and noticed that there was only 4 hours of audio, but we'd been asleep for nearly 8 hours. I started listening to the audio, and it seemed normal at first. I could hear the conversation we had right after starting the recording, but no longer saw the big spike from the thunder which I initially dismissed. Upon further inspection I see a spike on the track about 2 hours in, which would have been around 3 AM. I moved to that section of the track and hit play. In the recording I could hear what was obviously my cell phone ringing, but only partial sections of the ringtone. It rang like this 3 or 4 times, and then I clearly hear an unfamiliar voice say hello, in a hushed tone. I immediately grabbed my phone and checked the recent calls, and the last call I received was earlier the previous day when my friend called asking to hang out. No incoming or outgoing since. My brain exploded. I immediately called my friend's phone to see if his ringtone was the same. It wasn't. He woke up looking confused about getting a call from across the room, and when I explained what I found and played the audio, he was clearly a bit shaken and shied away from any paranormal conversations I tried to initiate from then on. Asterisk bonus: in addition to the weird phone call and missing thunder, throughout the recording was short sections of audio with a quiet but obvious train horn. This wouldn't have been weird because my house was very near a busy railway. However, this was more like an old school train whistle rather than a modern horn, which I'd never heard my entire life living there. Later that day, when I heard a train go by, I tried to record the sound with the same gear, thinking that the sound was somehow distorted, but what I found was that the horn was barely audible. This was strange, because the train whistle in the EVP was loud enough to make a visible spike on the recording track. Edit. I did post this on a similar thread a few weeks ago, but I got in so late, virtually nobody saw it. Post the audio. We would love to hear it. You know that black cloud that enters a room in The Grudge? I saw that for real one time, following a person who entered the apartment I was in. I freaked out and almost started hyperventilating, but of course, I couldn't tell the people around me what I was seeing, as I knew no one else was seeing it. I just darted out of there and sat in the elevator for a while on my way out. Never had shared that before. You got lucky. An elevator is the last place you wanna be when The Grudge shows up, except maybe an attic. A friend and I were parked in the countryside at night getting stoned. It wasn't uncommon for people our age to do this. Head into the country, find a safe spot, and get out and party a bit. We found a safe spot, got out and lit up. We were basically surrounded by woods, and it was about 2 AM and pitch black. Out of nowhere, we hear birds, almost like a crow's call, going nuts. So loud, and very close. Several different birds doing the same thing. See a caw. That was shortly followed by a sound of some sort of big cat. Probably a cougar. Its scream was deafening and very close. We got out of there at max speed, both jumping into the car without saying a word. After some research, we come to find out the state we were in, Illinois, has no populations of any mountain lions or cougars. That was about 15 years ago, and I still think about it. Like how close we were to danger. Hell, I still have no clue what it was, but those birds are the true brothers. Illinois has lots of bobcats and the occasional cougar. One cougar even showed up within Chicago city limits not many years ago. A long time ago in primary/elementary school, me and my friend came to the school compound on a Sunday to explore. We came in the wee hours in the morning, and coupled that it was a Sunday, there was nobody in. We were walking along a corridor on the first floor, when suddenly we heard this thunderous noise above us. You know the sound, where you drag a chair or a table across a floor? It was exactly that, but it sounded like there's multiple classrooms full of tables and chairs just moving around. It was loud, very loud, and it was extremely sudden. There's no reason why anybody would be in school, moving dozens of tables and chairs on their own on a Sunday 6 AM. We stood rooted, stared at each other for a second, and bolted. After we got out of school, he asked me whether I heard a lady screaming in the corridor. I said no. He didn't hear the dragging sounds either. Two people hearing two separate things. That's more terrifying than if you both heard the same sound. My brother gave me 2 cats before leaving the house for 6 months. One of the cats could not adjust. She became sad and stopped eating. We tried everything with her, but she eventually passed. One night I woke up to the sound of a cat walking in the room and some meowing, but the other cat had been snuggled up with me. It was a pretty sweet moment I think. Or maybe due to the stress of her pawing I just dreamt it. I don't know lol. I hear a lot of stories like this with cats specifically, so I wouldn't be surprised. Poor kitty though. I had a dream once, really grim. I was stumbling through what felt like a post-apocalyptic landscape. Buildings ruined, rubble and fire and smoke as far as the eye could see. I had such a horrible feeling of despair and desolation. Finally I pulled myself out of this dream. Shaking and sweating, I actually said duck aloud. I was never so glad to wake from a dream before. I had never had such a vivid, horrible dream. Showered, went to work, still shaking the lingering effects of the dream. On the drive-in, the radio news reported the first plane had hit the World Trade Center. My dream the night before 9/11 was that I was on a school trip to New York City and bought a puzzle of the city landscape as a souvenir. Back at our hotel I start the puzzle and every time I would be close to finish it, by putting the last piece in place that was the top of one of the twin towers, the puzzle would, I choose you not, crumble, but on the table, like from top to bottom and all the pieces in a stack in front of me. From there the dream was an endless loop of me trying to finish the puzzle, and it crumbling every time I'd put the last piece, top of the second tower in place. Next day was 9/11. I actually told my mom about this dream, but she brushed it off, and I never mentioned it again until now on the internet, here and another forum I frequent. Exactly a year after my closest friend killed herself, I stumbled into her boyfriend on a bridge at midnight in a city of 12 million. It weirded me out like nothing else. He also seemed shaken. P.S. The place had nothing to do with her death. Backstory: me and this guy were kinda a thing and had gone to the beach alone. I got a parking ticket. Ticket was taken care of within that week. Fast forward 3-ish years. He unfortunately took his own life, and this was a couple days after the funeral. I'm sitting on my bed with my friend. She had just gotten a new bag a couple days prior to our friend committing suicide. My friend reaches into her bag and pulls out a parking ticket. It was my ticket from years before when I went to the beach with him. Never had an explanation for it. Just knew it was him. I swear, I'm being haunted. My mom has this big stand thing where we put hand creams and face masks, and it's about an inch away from the counter closest to the toilet. Sometimes, when I use the toilet, it falls over onto me. I have one of those lamps with like 5 heads, and the shades are all different colors in my room for extra light. Sometimes, when I'm sleeping, I'll wake up to a loud bang. I open my eyes, and my lamp is lying on the floor. My little brother, 1, has a toy piano, where as long as you just touch the keys, it plays. Often, I wake up to that piano playing. My siblings are at daycare and my mom is at work by the time I wake up, so I'm alone. I always turn it off. None of my siblings play with it, and it only happens when I'm alone. I have a white heat lamp for my geckos, but we haven't used on in a few weeks. Every time we screw in a brand new bulb and turn the lamp on, the bulb pops and sometimes shatters. We've checked 1,000 times, and we are using the right bulb wattage for the right heat lamp. We even bought a new lamp, and the bulb still breaks. If anyone has any explanation for any of these, please tell me. I'm scared to use the toilet, and I'm scared to fall asleep. Edit. The bathroom stand is a good 2 feet tall and pretty heavy for its size, and only falls over on me. I've tried the heat lamp in multiple different outlets, and I've tried different brands of lamps. The toy piano did start playing randomly until about late February. We got it for Christmas 2019, and we had just recently changed the batteries. Edit 2. Thank you all for your advice and help. I really hope I can solve this thing. I found that just talking to ghosts out loud, like they are people, really helps. Hey man, I know you're going through it RN, but please quiet down, I'm sleeping. Has stopped the banging on my wall most nights. My brother committed suicide in 2010. He was airlifted 100 miles from his house to the town by us because it's a large town with great hospitals. His wife, the only person that lived with him, of course, drive her car to the hospital, leaving their house completely closed up and locked. His cell phone was left in his home office by his wife. The next morning I got a call from his cell phone. I answered, but nobody was on the other end. I said hi a couple times with no response. I finally said everything is okay, and the line immediately disconnected. Never got a call from that number again. My uncle committed suicide in 2008. He did not die right away, but spent 2 days in the hospital before he was declared brain dead sometime in the middle of the night. Around that same time my cousin was woken up with a kiss to her cheek, but nobody else was there in the room she was staying in. After his death his cell phone was turned off and placed in a drawer. The morning after the funeral my sane cousin woke up to find multiple missed calls from her dad's off phone. Removed. Me too, man. So many good stories. I met my first boyfriend when we were both 17 and in our last year of high school. His dad has passed away when he was 15 from lung cancer, and he was still having a hard time with it. His living circumstances at the time were also pretty dismal, but that's another story. My ex smoked cigarettes, which his dad was really against before he died, but he did it anyways. His pack of smokes would disappear almost daily and appear in the most random places. Under the fitted bedsheet, in between the mattress and box spring, buried in a basket of clean laundry, etc. One night we were laying in bed and his headboard had a ledge to it that he kept his smokes and drinks on. I was laying down looking straight up as he sat up to grab them, and they flew off the headboard. I saw them twist a bit and then just get tossed. We were both stunned for a minute before we both agreed we had seen the same thing, but it still took us a half an hour to find the pack because it didn't fly across the room but instead ended up underneath the bed quite a ways in. We weren't close to a wall, so they didn't ricochet. One night I was on my side in his bed looking at the wall and a clear shadow of man appeared in front of me. Thinking it was my ex, I started talking and joking around, but he didn't answer, so I looked over my shoulder. No one there. Looked back at the wall and the shadow was still there. It lingered and walked away before my ex came back into the room. That happened occasionally. I always thought it was just him checking in and seeing what I was like and if he was happy. Finally, we had a pretty rough breakup. He had a lot of demons. He cheated and became abusive. It was bad. He left pretty quickly as we lived with my family and he was unstable, but he left behind most of his stuff. This included his dad's ashes, his vinyl collection, magazines, guitar, etc. It was all he had left of his dad, and I refused to throw them out, so I kept them in my bedroom closet, even though it took him a year to finally come around and get them. The night that everything got picked up, I heard my closet door rattle and things move around the perimeter of my room. My lamp on my nightstand flickered on and off. It was his dad's lamp he let me keep because I used it for crafts, and my cup of water rocked back and forth. I said goodnight, Mr. *****, and take care of insert X name. A few moments later my bedroom door rattled, and that was that. He was a pretty chill ghost. He did smoke a lot of hash in life, so that might have helped lol. He left his dad's ashes? WTF. I don't know if I have an overactive imagination. I don't know if it's because I only ever have terrifying nightmares on the regular. I don't know if I just overexcited myself. A few nights ago I woke up, but definitely not completely, and saw a large hunched over horned demon-esque figure in the corner, just standing there, raptor-looking arms as crouched as his body. A year ago I woke up in the night to being touched on the face. Only could open my eyes, and it was eerily out of movie scene. Groggy and unable to speak. It was a three-fingered alien, retracting his hand from very close to my face, making clicking noises. Had a buddy with him. Don't think I was chosen though. Sounds like some serious sleep paralysis. You should look into it. Was driving through the rural south with my only one car in front of us. A Volvo. I remember it had that old beige color. Winding road in Appalachian mountains. The kind where, if you don't slow down, off the edge of the mountain you go. There's a sharp turn. We expect it, because we've done this route so many times before. The car in front of us slams into it at an angle, his left nose looking like it's going to be ducked up. I see pieces and fragments of it falling off. Instead of stopping he keeps driving. Weird. 10 minutes later we get off the last mountain and onto a decently major highway. There are plenty of exits. Car still doesn't get off. We start to park car using the left parking lane. And lo and behold, the car is spotless. No sign of the damage. Not even a scratch. We had both literally seen actual pieces flying off this car and there is absolutely no sign of damage. Also, immediately after we park him, the guy quickly gets off the highway. He was wearing what looked like an Indiana Jones type hat, and you couldn't see his face. But he noticeably hunkered down after seeing us notice him. It was the strangest thing. I almost feel like it was some glitch I wasn't supposed to see, but I'm not saying it was. I believe in science, and not glitches, but dang. It's been years, and we still talk about it. Creepy things happen in those mountains. I was reading the Appalachians used to be connected to the Scottish Highlands millions of years ago. Makes sense to me. Had also met an no-nonsense oil tanker guy who swore he had seen a Sasquatch in West Virginia. Of course it was West Virginia. Edit. People are saying that's just how vulvas are made, and I believe it, and that's what I would say to anyone who had told me this, but I wish I could explain how *ducking hard he hit the rail and to literally see car colored chunks of his car flying off and there not being a single scratch. I was reading the Appalachians used to be connected to the Scottish Highlands millions of years ago. Makes sense to me. Interesting, since the Appalachia was mainly settled by the Scots-Irish. So in my grandparents' old house we had swings, and my cousin loved them so much one night my mom went outside and saw my cousin there looking kind of sad, but shrugged it off and went back inside. The second she steps foot inside she sees the same cousin getting out of the bathroom. She asked her how she came in so fast and my cousin didn't know what she was talking about. My mom went outside and there wasn't anybody on the swing, but it was swinging. It wasn't windy and they were the only people in the house. Many years ago, I was riding home on a city bus, one I'd ridden many times before, on a route I'd been on many times before, on a perfectly fine day. Then about 4 blocks from home, an overwhelming feeling of dread came over me. I had no idea why, but I felt absolutely sure that something very bad was about to happen right then and there. I walked to the front of the bus as calmly as I could and told the driver that I felt sick to my stomach. Which was partly true, but mainly it was because I knew they'd stop and let me off right away, which they did. I immediately started walking home. I did not hear the bus start up again from where it stopped to let me off. A block away, I looked back and it was still there. Another block, still there. All the way home, still ****. I went inside and calmed down, then came out about 10 minutes later to look. The bus had still not moved. I went back inside. Half an hour later, it was gone. I never did find out anything more. I keep reading these stories and mildly wondering if one of them will jog my memory of something weird that I experienced but have just forgotten, and it's taken me most of the way down until I reached your story that it actually has happened. I don't know, maybe you're me or I'm you, but it's like I could have written this story myself. I rode the bus exclusively from age 16 through like 5 years ago. I'm 40 now, and I have literally lived this experience. And let me tell you, I knew that if I had ridden the bus to my stop, something really bad was going to have happened to me. And I think that's what this was. See, the weirdness isn't so much that the bus waited. It's that you were impressed upon to get off early. I don't doubt that the driver knew you were getting off early, and that probably made them pay attention. I've had a bus strangely not continue on its way after I got off more than once, and it's weird. I always thought it was related to me. It probably wasn't, but who knows? That's why it's so creepy. Anyway, it's super strange to me that you, a complete stranger, and I, another complete stranger, have had an exact same experience. What would have happened if you had ridden to your normal stop? Certain death. Catastrophe? Like the user u/Becca_Amethyst says, the bus was taking you someplace you had no business being yet. As in, it wasn't your time to die. It wasn't my time to die. Spooky stuff, man. My dad died from unexpected heart attack, and he was on the hospital for 6 days before he died. The 6th day, before they call us to tell us that he is gone, I see him in my dreams. I see him say goodbye to me and close the door of our house. Forever. That happened 6 years before, and I don't care if it's paranormal or not. It makes me sad both ways. I was young and digital cameras were a new thing. I was obsessed with them, and my mom would buy me a camera. We'd try it and see if we liked it, and if it was chisty we'd take it back. We purchased a cheap one. Indoor pictures had a red and yellow hue. It had long exposure, so a lot of the times there were streaks and weird stuff. I took a picture of my room one day and plugged it up to the computer to view the picture. There was a full-blown man wearing sweatpants and a sweatshirt with a hat. There were also light streaks in the picture, but he clearly looked different from the imperfections, like there was a man actually there in mid-walking motion. I called my mom right before commenting this to ask if she remembers that. She said she didn't really. I don't believe her, because the camera immediately disappeared after this event and she never got me another. When I think about it now in my late 20s, it still makes tears come to my eyes, because the house I grew up in was so scary and weird. I've never felt like that in any other home. Something was off. I'd like to hear more about how scary and weird this house was. I had a very weird dream one night of the house with a lot of rooms and some stairs, and there were some people I didn't know, and a lot was going on, but at one point I didn't feel really good in a dream. The next day I go for a coffee with a friend and she's telling me how she smoked a joint and felt really bad that same night. I had a dream, AMD, that she had a little of a panic attack. I started talking about the house I had a dream about, and she's looking at me like she saw a ghost. Turns out I described the house she was in. When we started talking more about it, we figured out that it's possible it was at the exact same moment, my dream and her experience. That's something I will never be able to explain to myself, and also a thing I don't tell a lot of people cause I wouldn't believe it either if somebody was telling me this story. When my husband was a bit younger, he ate some mushrooms and right when they started working, his mom called him just to check if he was okay because she had a bad feeling. They aren't super close either. They go weeks without talking sometimes. I posted this a while ago in /the but realized later that it's a sub for true believers, so thought I would repost it here. I have 2 creepy stories I tell sometimes, but which aren't true. I have one weird story, though, which is true, and that I've only told once or twice. When I was about 14, I was working as a counselor in a Riwaka summer day camp. I was by the side of the pool with some younger kids and had bought a candy bar I didn't want, so I was going to give it to whomever guessed the number one was thinking. One girl, maybe 10, guessed the number and I gave her the candy bar. I thought of a second number and asked her to guess it, which she did. I don't remember whether up to this point I had said, pick a number between 1 and 10, or between 1 and 20, but after she had guessed right twice, I started increasing the range, between 1 and 100, between 1 and 1000. Each time she got it right. So I wanted to widen the range, but I wanted to make sure I remembered the number, so I started writing down the numbers on my clipboard. The clipboard had a day's activities or attendance sheet I don't remember, and she still got every one. Another of the little kids said that maybe she could see what I was writing, so I went to the end of the pool by myself, wrote down the number, and then she would call out the number. I know we got up to 7 digits and the only mistake she made was once reversing 2 digits. Then the little kids got bored and went off to do something else. I really have no idea how this happened. Missed opportunity. You should have brought her a lottery ticket to fill out. When I was around 15, I had a huge falling out with my parents and moved about 150 miles away from home to live with my aunt on her 500-acre farm in the middle of nowhere. I was home alone at her house often, as she worked and was recently widowed. One afternoon I left my bedroom to walk to the kitchen. When I did, I passed by an unused guest room, but was shocked to see a man sitting at the corner of the bed staring out the sliding glass door at the rolling hills of my aunt's property. I paused in the doorway realizing that this man looked hazy. It was like he wasn't a solid being, but a thick mist made up of natural colors. Difficult to explain, but everything was colored normally. He was just sitting there, leaned over a bit with his elbows on his knees clenching and rubbing his hands. He turned slowly and looked at me, and by that time I had come to my senses and ran to the garage. I was terrified and thought I was losing my mind. But as I gathered myself I realized the man looked like my grandpa, who I had only ever seen a few pictures of because he died 5 years before I was born. After I calmed down I bravely went back to the hall where the guest room was and shut the door. My family has generally talked down about ghost stories and sightings for religious reasons, so I was somewhat afraid to tell my aunt what I saw. I primed my question focusing it on her recently passed husband. Do you think, if spirits did exist, he would come to visit you? She was a bit startled at my question, but eventually confessed that she thinks her husband does visit her. She said, sometimes I will walk down the hall, and right by the guest room I can smell his cologne so strong it's like he's right beside me. I then told her about what I saw and how the man was sitting, and she smiled and said, I think your grandpa was just checking in on you. He came for a visit once, and that was the room he stayed in. He loved the view. After our conversation, I felt okay about what I saw, and we didn't discuss it any further. A month later my aunt and I were passing through my hometown on our way to a wedding, and she said that we really should try to have a sit down with my parents. I agreed and things were going great when my aunt said, tell your dad what you saw in the guest room. I didn't want to because my dad was the main person who was against the talk of ghosts and this was his dad I was talking about. I gathered the courage to tell my dad, and I showed him exactly how the man was sitting and how he was rubbing his hands. Almost immediately I could see my dad was about to cry. He looked at my aunt and said Dad used to sit like that all the time. My aunt nodded, and then my dad said he was always rubbing his hands like that because they ached so bad from arthritis. I never saw my grandpa or a figure like that again. I also have never seen any video footage of my grandfather, only a few pictures. And none of the pictures show him sitting in that manner or rubbing/clenching his hands. So I don't know how my brain would have been able to create that movement that was apparently super accurate. Also, oddly enough, today would have been my grandpa's 111th birthday. Once rounded the corner at night in the woods on a go-kart and saw a massive creature standing upright by the trees. I remember it having a really long tail, which is what strikes me as odd. It was 2014 I think. I got my first job on a really strict company where being late is a crime. So I was never late. But one time I forgot to set my alarm and it's already past 7 AM. I rushed to work and really saw everyone outside rushing too. Felt the morning sun on my skin. When I got on the company premises there's this long walk we had to take. It's outside. So I just casually walked fast to my office when I notice that it's getting darker and the people I'm walking with seem to decrease in number. It's a big company and there's a lot of employee. When I came to the entrance it got really dark, like early morning dark, and the guards were surprised to see me and told me, "Whoa, you're early." I'm confused. I looked at the time and saw it's only around 6 AM. I had to wait till 7 AM for them to let me inside the office. I was so shocked I just sat there and waited. I'm pretty sure it should be around 8 AM already. I didn't tell this to anyone cause it seemed crazy even for me. I tried searching the net for this kind of what they call time slip. I don't know if that what it was. And up to now I'm still confused on what happened back then. P.S. I'm not a crazy person. My dude, you turned back time. This actually happened to me about 2 weeks ago. We had a particularly nasty storm roll through parts of North Georgia in the middle of the night. I was sitting out on the porch, smoking a cig, right before it started, and then all of a sudden multiple flashes of lightning go off at once. About 2 seconds or so later the entire sky flashed green exactly one time. The green color hung around the sky for about 3 or 4 seconds, and then just ducking faded. It certainly didn't behave like normal lightning, in that it didn't flash multiple times. It just faded in and faded out. Weirdest chiz I've ever seen in a storm. IDK if it's similar, but I have seen the sky turn green prior to a tornado. There's a weird feeling outside when it happens. A couple years back I was at my grandmother's funeral. My dad, brother, and I had all got there early because we'd made good time in traffic. So we were waiting for my extended family. We ended up wandering around the cemetery. My brother and I were trying to find the oldest grave. Weird, I know, but my whole family are big history nerds and graveyards can be pretty cool as long as you're respectful and stay on the paths. Anyway, we walked past this one grave and I just immediately felt awful. I became extremely cold and nauseous, even though it was a warm and sunny day. My breath caught in my throat, so I couldn't breathe, and my vision started spotting and went black. I thought I was going to pass out, and then it just stopped, just as quickly as it had started, and I felt fine. My brother was still saying whatever he was saying before. I missed about a sentence, and hadn't noticed anything. I didn't tell him about it, figuring he wouldn't believe me, so I just said that we should head back before the funeral started. I probably would have dismissed the incident entirely, except the next spring my brother and I were hanging out and tree climbing in a park. It had a lot of the tall trees you see in prairies, and a good number of trees as it backed up into some woods. I started climbing a tree I'd gone up a few times before, and then I got hit by the same feeling. It was the same sudden nausea, inability to breathe, and vision fading out. It was identical to what I felt at the cemetery. I dropped out of the tree and had to sit down until it passed. After that I convinced my brother to leave cause I felt sick, even though after it passed I felt fine. They found a body in the woods by the park a few weeks later, mostly decomposed cause it had been out there all winter. Creeped me out beyond belief. Never had that feeling since. Sounds like a mitral valve prolapse experience. Might wanna get a checkup. I have it, not terribly serious, but when I was younger I would faint from time to time. I'm a forest ranger and hunt averagely. I live in the Netherlands and was on a hunting trip in Germany. Now I'm a Germanic pagan, which means that I believe in the old gods and even some of the fearful creatures that come out at night for them to hunt. This was at day 3 of what was supposed to be a hunting trip of a week. Things were going well. I had seen a lot of game in the past 3 days. I was tracking a deer since day 2 by that time. Anyway, it was night and I had set up a tent in the woods. This would normally be illegal, but I had an agreement with the owner of the forest since it was a relative of mine. I was sleeping when I would suddenly be woken up by a weird sound in the woods. I originally thought it was an animal, but I had no knowledge of one making a sound like this. It was about 2 in the morning, and I thought nothing much of it, so I tried going back to sleep with my knife a little closer than before. I failed in going back to sleep because the weird sound had me in its grasp. There was something about it that was so interesting to me. It was kind of a low burling sound, like you would hear from a male deer when it's mating season. The problem was that it wasn't mating season. The sound also had a strange high-pitched tone and a sort of growl at the same time to it that a deer would not been able to make. Interested to what it was out there, I grabbed my rifle and knife and went to take a look outside. The sound was back again. I now walked in the distance of the sound, now also with a healthy bit of fear of the unknown. I got closer and closer to the sound when I suddenly stepped into water. There was a pool in front of me. A bit irritated that I got my socks wet over my own imagination, I decided that it was in my head and that I should go back to my tent. But then I saw a glimpse of something at the edge of the water at the other side of the pool. It was something that looked like a mix between a big black wolf-like creature and a kind of deer, since I thought to have seen that it had antlers. I couldn't see it clearly because it was almost pitch black, but I went back straight away, not even shooting at it. I couldn't sleep the entire night thinking about what I had heard and seen. I started thinking about the creatures that I had read of and thought it maybe was a Raufhoker, a type of shapeshifter in German mythology. But at the end of the night I came by the conclusion that I should continue hunting. I shot a deer 2 days later and went home, not forgetting what I had seen in the night, since it gave me a good fright. But mostly because there are way more dangerous creatures than that in the woods, if you should believe in the folklore or mythology. I love our folklore here in Scandinavia about all the different creatures and monsters that lives in nature, but it's nothing I believe in, just a fun little thing to read about. That being said, I was about 45 minutes deep in a remote wooden with my dog, just to let it run off some steam, but during that journey on the path I couldn't stop looking further into the woods like something was looking at me, or we were not alone. I was 23 at the time, spent the whole journey back looking over my shoulder and only going of the path to call back the dog. But it was most likely just some silly minchest in the back of my head after reading folklore tales. Funny how those things can make you a tad paranoid when lonely in the woods. Would have been fun to meet Skogsrat though. When I was a kid I slept on the top bunk above my little brother. One night I woke up to a sharp biting pain on my toe and jolted up to look at the foot of my bed. I saw 2 glowing red eyes and the shadowy head of what appeared to be a fox or dog. I blinked and it was gone, but my toe hurt until the next day. Odds are I had a nightmare and it followed me into a night terror-like state, and it was just my dream continuing, but I'm 30 now and still remember it very clearly. As teenagers, my friends and I were walking back through a graveyard one night. We were walking towards the top gate along a side path. As we neared the top, we noticed what appeared to be an elderly woman in rags walking really slow towards the top. Our first thought was not to distress her by walking out, but we all commented on her dress. Imagine 18th century style. She stopped on the path and turned running back towards THR bottom. Her movement was so weird, it was like a young woman. No homeless in the area and none of us were paranormal believers. To this day we still bring it up. The weirdest thing was her style and her movement. I was walking to a job with a colleague when I suddenly became very dizzy. It passed very quickly and I heard my colleague say, "Whoa, I just had a massive head rush." Never worked out what would cause us both to have that feeling at the same time. I've also never shared this with anyone. Edit. We were in an office by a railway line. Thinking about it, I remember that I saw a cow or kapar out on the same spot about a year earlier. Weird, huh? Oh my. You watched until the end? That's fucking awesome, dude. Thanks for watching.